What do you do when the sun rises but your soul still feels like midnight? When the world says, get up, but your spirit says, I can't move. Hear me, beloved. This is not the end. This is the moment before resurrection. Just as Jesus stood outside Lazarus' tomb and called him forth, God is standing outside the tomb of your weariness this morning saying, come out. You see, sometimes God lets the night linger just long enough for you to recognize that he is the light. So before you rush into your day, pause. Because what I'm about to reveal to you about starting your day with Jesus Christ could shift your entire perspective forever. But you must watch this video until the very end. Don't skip. What does it mean to wake up? Not just to open your eyes, but to become aware, to rise into the consciousness of divine presence before the world rushes in. So many people awaken into noise, notifications, worries, plans, and the endless churning of tomorrow's demands. But when the sun lifts itself over the horizon, there is an invitation waiting, a sacred moment, quiet yet eternal, whispering before the world speaks. Hear from heaven first. The first voice you let into your day becomes the rhythm of your soul. If the voice of fear greets you first, you will carry anxiety into everything you touch. If the voice of anger is the first you entertain, you'll find yourself battling shadows that don't exist. But if the first voice you hear is the voice of spirit, still, gentle, unwavering, your day begins anchored in peace rather than tossed in chaos. You see, the morning is holy not because of the hour, but because of the awareness that comes with it. It's the moment between dreaming and doing where heaven and earth briefly touch. It's the space where you can decide whether to live reactively, like a leaf tossed by the wind, or to live deliberately, like a tree rooted in something far deeper. When Jesus would rise before dawn to pray, it wasn't simply an act of ritual, it was alignment. He was positioning himself before the noise of the crowd, before the pressure of miracles, before the demands of men. In that stillness, he remembered who he was, and that remembrance carried him through the day. When you begin with spirit, you begin with identity. You start from wholeness instead of scrambling to find it. We often think of prayer as words we speak to God, but in the morning, prayer begins as listening. Listen to the pulse of your own heart, the divine rhythm that has never once failed to beat through the night. Listen to the sound of breath moving in and out, as if heaven itself is breathing you into being again. That is grace in motion. That is proof of purpose. Every inhale says, you're still here. Every exhale whispers, no live like it. When you sit in that awareness, even for a few minutes, you'll notice the difference. The day doesn't rush you as much. The voices around you lose their power to disturb your peace. You respond instead of react. You move through your morning like someone who knows the source of their strength. That's what it means to give God the first word. Not necessarily through loud declarations, but through stillness, through presence, through willingness to begin not from chaos, but from communion. And maybe that's what David meant when he said, early will I seek thee. It wasn't about the clock. It was about priority. Before the decisions, before the distractions, before the world writes your story for you, take back authorship. Invite the divine into your first thoughts. Let gratitude be the ink that writes your morning. Try this tomorrow when you wake. Don't reach for your phone. Don't rush to fill the silence. Sit there. Let the quiet greet you like an old friend. Whisper, thank you. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are present. The mind will wander. Of course, it always does. But gently bring it back again and again to the awareness that you are held In that moment, the ordinary becomes sacred. The bed becomes an altar. The light through your window becomes revelation. This is how you begin your day with Jesus, not through obligation, but through awakening. Not to escape the world, but to enter it differently. The morning isn't just the start of a new day, it's the reminder that resurrection happens daily. Every sunrise is an echo of grace saying, you get to begin again. So when the world shouts for your attention, when fear and fatigue demand the first word, remember, you have a choice. You can listen to the noise, or you can listen to the stillness beneath it, the voice that has never left you, the one that quietly says, peace, be still. Start there. Because when you begin your day rooted in divine awareness, everything else flows from it. Begin your morning with heaven's voice and watch how the whole world begins to answer back in peace. When you awaken and your first breath greets the dawn, there exists an unseen opportunity, a doorway between spirit and sound. Before you rush into schedules and screens, there is a sacred space where worship can transform what might have been an ordinary morning into something alive, radiant, and utterly new. You see, praise is not merely singing, it is remembering. It is the recognition that existence itself is already a hymn being sung through you. When we worship, we shift our perception from separation to connection. The song, the prayer, the whispered, thank you, are not offerings to a distant deity, but awakenings to the divine that has never left. In worship, you don't reach for God, you realize God. You come into tune with that great harmony that hums beneath every heartbeat and behind every breeze. Think of Paul and Silas, imprisoned in darkness, chained by circumstance, yet singing into the night. They were not waiting for the morning to bring light. They became the light through their praise. The stones of the prison did not crumble because of volume or melody, but because worship shifted the vibration of their souls. And when consciousness shifts, so does the world around it. Worship has always been the language of transformation. It changes the worshiper long before it changes the situation. Now imagine this power in your morning. Before the news speaks fear, before the clock demands action, before the day defines you, lift your spirit in song. It doesn't have to be loud or polished. It can be a hum, a sigh, a whisper that says, I am grateful to be alive. That alone begins to alter the frequency of your day. You'll notice how even simple things, sunlight on your skin, the taste of water, the sound of your own breath, begin to glow with meaning. You see, the essence of worship is not performance, but presence. It is not about impressing heaven. It is about opening yourself to it. When you praise, you align your inner rhythm with divine order. You are saying without words, I am part of something vast, something sacred, something alive. That acknowledgement draws heaven's reality into your reality, and suddenly ordinary life becomes holy ground. Perhaps the reason many wake weary and uninspired is because they have forgotten to tune their souls. Just as an instrument left untouched goes out of key, so too does the heart that never pauses to praise. Worship retunes you. It brings you back into harmony with joy, even when joy feels far away. It lifts your attention from what's missing to what's already been given. It calls you out of complaint and into communion. And it is in this posture that strength rises quietly, steadily, like the morning sun. You realize that you are not singing to get something from God. You are singing because you've already received something you could never repay, life itself. Worship then becomes an act of remembering who you are, whose you are, and what truly matters before the noise of the world begins to tell you otherwise. When you begin your day this way, With praise instead of panic, you find that situations no longer control your spirit. Gratitude becomes armor, joy becomes strength, and peace becomes your native language. The world still whirls with its chaos, but your inner stillness holds firm because you've already anchored yourself in something unshakable. So tomorrow morning, before the weight of the world returns, stop and lift your heart. Sing if you can, whisper if you must, but let your soul remember its song. For in that sacred sound, life responds, it bends, it softens, it opens. And when the day unfolds, you will discover this truth. Those who begin with worship never walk alone, for every step thereafter becomes a continuation of that song. So many of us think of prayer as a kind of spiritual transaction, a list we hand to heaven, hoping for divine approval. We come to God as though he were a distant monarch and we the petitioners at his gate. But the truth is far simpler, far more intimate. Prayer is not about getting things, it's about getting aligned. It is not about convincing God to move, it is about remembering that he already is. To pray is to pause long enough to return to the center, the place within where divine order and human desire meet. It's the quiet acknowledgement that the same life animating the trees, the waves, the stars is breathing you right now. When you pray, you are not shouting into emptiness. You are speaking within the very heart of presence itself. Think for a moment about how the sun rises. It doesn't strain or struggle to push its light across the sky. It simply is, and everything around it adjusts. Prayer works much the same way. It doesn't twist the arm of heaven. It turns your own face toward the light so that your life can reflect what has always been shining. The world outside may not change immediately, but you will. And that's where true transformation begins. So when you wake and begin your morning, don't see prayer as another item to check off your list. See it as positioning, a daily alignment between the chaos of your mind and the clarity of your spirit. You don't have to speak eloquently. You don't have to have the right words. Sometimes the best prayers are simply breaths, deep, surrendered, honest breaths that say, "Here I am, Lord." Consider how Jesus taught his disciples to pray. He didn't give them complicated rituals. He said, "Oh, Father," two words that change everything. That single phrase places you not as a beggar before a king, but as a child before a loving parent. It reminds you that prayer begins with a relationship, not desperation. That is the posture that unlocks peace. When you start your day in that awareness, you carry a different energy into every conversation, every decision, every encounter. You are no longer reacting to life as if it's happening to you. You are responding from a place of partnership with the divine. You begin to sense that even your smallest actions, pouring coffee, speaking kindly, taking a breath, are part of a larger conversation between heaven and earth. Prayer at its core is not about asking, it's about attuning. You tune your heart like a musician tunes an instrument, not to make noise, but to make harmony. And the more you pray, not with words, but with awareness, the more your days begin to flow instead of fight. You'll notice it in small ways, in the way peace lingers when it shouldn't, in the way clarity comes when confusion once ruled, in the way love rises naturally where irritation used to dwell. Sometimes prayer doesn't change the situation at all. It changes you so that you can stand within it differently. It rearranges your perception, and suddenly what once felt unbearable becomes manageable. What once seemed chaotic reveals its hidden order. The mountain doesn't always move, but the climber finds new strength. That is the quiet miracle of alignment. So when you kneel or sit or simply breathe your first prayer of the day, remember you are not coming to inform God of your needs. You are coming to be reminded of your nature. You are a participant in divine creation, not a spectator hoping for mercy. You are here to labor with grace, to open the windows of your heart so that heaven might flow through you. And when you understand prayer that way, it becomes less about saying the right things and more about becoming the right vessel. Less about asking for light and more about learning how to shine it. Prayer then is not a performance, it's positioning. It's the gentle turning of your soul toward alignment with the divine current that never stops moving through life. And once you found that current, you realize you were never drifting after all. You were simply learning to flow with the tide of God. Pray not to change the world, but to awaken the part of you that already knows it is one with the divine. Each morning, as the body awakens, so too must the mind and spirit. But while most of us rush to feed the body coffee, toast, the quick fix of routine, we often forget to feed the soul. And yet, the spirit hungers just as the stomach does. It hungers for meaning, for stability, for truth that does not tremble when the day begins to shake. That is why the word of God, spoken or read at dawn, is not merely a ritual. It is nourishment. It is your daily bread. The words of Scripture are not ancient echoes meant only for prophets and preachers. They are living frequencies. Every verse is a vibration that speaks to the divine consciousness within you. When you open the word, you are not reaching into dusty history. You are opening a portal to presence. You are letting divine thought speak into human time. Think of it like tuning an instrument. Without tuning, even the most skillful musician cannot create harmony. The word tunes the soul. It brings your scattered thoughts into a single note of awareness. It reminds you of what is real before the noise of the world convinces you otherwise. When you read, "Be still and know that I am God," it isn't just a command, it's an invitation to remember what stillness truly is. To return to the inner calm where divinity whispers and ego falls silent. When Jesus said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God," he was revealing a simple but profound truth. Physical food sustains your body, but divine truth sustains your being. You can eat and still feel empty if your soul is starving. But one word of divine wisdom, truly received, can satisfy an ache that no amount of success or comfort could ever touch. Each morning, when you sit with Scripture, whether it's a psalm, a proverb, a parable, you are not performing a duty. You are drinking from a well that never runs dry. You are letting light enter the dark corners of thought. Sometimes a single verse will speak louder than an entire sermon because it meets you exactly where you are. The right word at the right time becomes a seed, and if you tend to it through the day with awareness, with humility, it will grow into peace, into direction, into strength. There will be mornings when the words seem lifeless, when your mind drifts, when you feel no revelation at all. But even then, the act of showing up matters. The body doesn't always crave vegetables, yet they nourish regardless. The soul doesn't always crave Scripture, but it absorbs truth quietly, even when you don't feel it. That's the mystery of divine sustenance. It works beneath awareness, planting roots in silence. Over time, something begins to shift. You'll find yourself recalling phrases in moments of uncertainty. Wisdom will surface unbidden, like light through a cloud. It won't come from effort, but from relationship. The word has a way of living in you until it becomes your instinct. When fear arises, faith responds, not because you forced it, but because truth has been built into your foundation. And perhaps that's the beauty of starting your day this way. Before the world defines you with headlines, opinions, and demands, you let truth define you. You remember that your worth is not earned, it's revealed. You realize that while the world around you changes, the word within you remains constant. It becomes the compass when emotions waver, the anchor when storms come, the voice that says, peace be still, when all else roars. Reading the word is not about mastering theology. It's about remembering divinity. It's about letting eternal wisdom reintroduce you to who you've always been, a vessel of light, made in the image of truth itself. The scriptures don't simply inform, they transform. They do not just speak of God, they awaken the awareness of God within you. So when you begin your day, open the page, not out of duty, but out of hunger. Let the words breathe through you until you no longer read them. They begin to read you. Feed your spirit first, and you will find that everything else you consume throughout the day tastes of peace. Words are powerful things, strange, invisible, yet shaping the very world we live in. Everything you see, touch, or believe began with a word. The universe itself, in the ancient telling, was spoken into being. Let there be light. And there was light. That is not just poetry. It is the deepest metaphor of creation. Words are the bridge between the unseen and the seen, the inner and the outer, the possible and the real. Every morning when you wake, the first words you speak are seeds. They fall into the soil of your consciousness, and before the day even begins, they start to grow. If you rise with complaint, you've already planted frustration. If you speak doubt, you've built a wall before taking your first step. But when you speak gratitude, when you declare truth, even before you see it, something shifts. The atmosphere changes, not out there, but within. The heart expands, the mind clears, and the day begins to bend toward the light you have chosen to acknowledge. You might think words are trivial, but watch what happens when you change them. Tell a child you are loved, and their posture changes. Tell yourself, this is the day the Lord has made, and suddenly the weight you carried loses its authority. Language, when aligned with spirit, does not describe reality, it defines it. That's why starting your day by declaring what God has spoken rather than what fear whispers is an act of spiritual clarity. You're not pretending that pain doesn't exist. You're remembering that it doesn't have the final word. You are aligning your tongue with truth rather than with turbulence. And in doing so, you take ownership of your atmosphere before the world does. You see, every thought you think is a quiet word, and every word you speak is a thought set free. What you repeat becomes what you believe, and what you believe becomes what you live. So when the morning comes, speak with intention. Say, peace flows through me. Say, I walk in grace. Say, I am guided. You're not chanting to force something to happen. You're awakening what is already true. There's a story of the prophet Ezekiel standing in a valley full of dry bones, symbols of loss, exhaustion, and death. God tells him to speak, not to analyze, not to lament, but to prophecy, to declare life where there was none. And as he spoke, bone found bone, sinew found structure, and breath found form. The power was not in the sound, but in the alignment. He spoke what heaven already intended, and the physical world had no choice but to respond. That's what happens when you declare God's truth over your life each morning. You prophesy to the dry bones of your circumstances. You remind your own soul of the reality that transcends appearance. You shift your inner frequency until peace becomes not an outcome, but your natural state. And it's remarkable how the outer world begins to echo that tone. Because if fear can be contagious, so can faith. If complaint can spread, so can calm. Your words ripple outward, touching others in ways you can't see. Every time you choose to bless rather than curse, to speak life instead of limitation, you are reordering reality, one vibration at a time. This is why it matters what you say when the day begins. Don't let the news be the first prophet of your morning. Don't let despair narrate your destiny. Stand in the light of truth and let your voice become an instrument of it. The divine spoke creation into being, and you, being made in that same image, continue the work with every syllable you release. So tomorrow, when you wake and your thoughts start to scatter, pause. Let your first words be intentional. Speak light. Speak peace. Speak life. For the one who learns to command their words will soon find their world speaking back in harmony. There's something profoundly sacred about the beginning of a day. It is a threshold, a space between what has been and what has yet to unfold. And in that quiet crossing, you are offered a choice to enter the day carrying yesterday's weight or to surrender it and begin again. Morning surrender is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is the art of yielding to the rhythm of divine flow rather than wrestling against it. We have been taught to wake and conquer, to rise, to hustle, to take control. But the more we cling, the more life resists. There is a strange paradox here. Only when you release your grip do things begin to move with grace. Surrender is not giving up, it's giving over to something larger, something wiser, something infinitely more harmonious than the anxious plans we build overnight. When you surrender your morning, you acknowledge that your strength is borrowed, your breath is gifted, your life is a collaboration between the eternal and the temporal. It is in that awareness that real power is found, not the power of control, but the power of connection. You are no longer fighting the current, you are flowing with it. Each morning, the world invites you to worry, to think of what might go wrong, who might disappoint you, what still needs fixing. And yet, that invitation is not mandatory. You can choose another response. You can begin instead with release. You can say, today I choose peace. Today, I will not strive for perfection. I will move in presence. That decision, quiet though it may seem, rearranges the entire architecture of your day. Surrender doesn't mean passivity. It means partnership. You still move, but no longer from fear. You still act, but no longer from ego. You begin to understand that every obstacle is not an enemy, but a messenger. Every delay is not denial, but direction. Life stops happening to you and begins happening through you. That is the subtle but miraculous shift that occurs when you surrender your morning to God's rhythm instead of your own. Think of Jesus in the garden facing the weight of the cross. In that moment, he didn't fight the unfolding. He prayed, not my will, but yours be done. That was not defeat. It was divine alignment. From surrender came resurrection. From yielding came victory. The same principle holds true in our smaller daily resurrections. Every morning, when you surrender, you die to fear and rise to faith. You let go of who you were yesterday so that who you truly are can emerge today. There will be days when surrender feels impossible, when the mind races and the heart tightens. That's when you remember that surrender is not a one-time act. It's a practice. You breathe deeply, exhale slowly, and remind yourself, this moment is not mine to control, only to honor. In that awareness, the tension loosens, peace slips in, grace returns. As you move through your day, you begin to notice how everything flows more easily when you stop forcing it. Conversations soften, decisions become clearer. Even challenges begin to serve a purpose. It's as if life has been waiting for you to stop wrestling long enough to lead you where you were meant to go all along. And so, each morning becomes a kind of quiet resurrection, a return to simplicity, to trust, to alignment with divine rhythm. You start to see that surrender is not the end of striving, it's the beginning of peace. It's where you stop asking the world to bend to your will and start allowing heaven to shape your path. When you start your day this way, victory becomes less about outcomes and more about awareness. You realize that the battle was never outside of you. It was always within. The struggle between control and trust, fear and faith, illusion and truth. So before you rush into tomorrow, pause, breathe, offer the day to God before the world claims it. Let surrender be your strength and peace your proof. For it is in the stillness of surrender that the day bows to your spirit and victory quietly begins.